Letty, it is awesome to see you. We met through Dan Cockrell's group, The Perch, way back when, and have stayed connected throughout, including doing a couple of Clubhouse episodes where you and Matthew Miller had a weekly show where you're really helping to get people to help people work through challenges that they're working through on a day in, day out basis, kind of be a better version of themselves, which kind of gets into this whole thing around personal growth, which is why we're talking today. So how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for asking. Yes, I am doing really great. You're right. We did meet back on the perch, also via Clubhouse. One of Dan's buddies reached out to me. He was super supportive and he's like, I need to connect you with a couple of guys. And you're one of those guys. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I'd be happy to connect with these guys. I'm like, well, if he's recommending them, I'll do it. And I reached out and we connected. And so it's been awesome getting to know you. And I'm really grateful that you did come onto the Clubhouse several times and were just so awesome with just giving of yourself and giving of the knowledge that you share that can help others. So thank you for that.
Well, so let's talk about some of your giving journey. You had an opportunity to speak recently. What was that like?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I had an opportunity to speak. So everything I've done online, this whole journey of personal development that I ran into by accident when I was about to turn 50. And I'm so grateful for it because I never knew anyone who worked with a coach or, anyone who was like a CEO or someone that had all this leadership training. Like I just lived a pretty regular life. And everything I've done from then to now has really been a part of helping me get to the point where I would have the courage to speak in front of people. It was a big challenge to even post a video online for the longest time. Like I've had to work through a lot of stuff. Recently, it just kind of all came together, and I got a chance to speak in front of 18 women at an event here in Kailua Kona called Your Clarity Day. And the person who put it on, Ann Dunnigan, she is one of my only in-person friends that is into personal development. And you know what that's like when you know a ton of people and they're all awesome people, but nobody gets your journey, you know? When you're into personal growth and you're just trying to live a really intentional life and trying to just learn and stay inspired and motivated and challenge yourself and work through fears and all this stuff, and no one really gets what you're going through, and you meet that one person, it's amazing. She's the one that put on the event, and I really thought maybe it'd be really cool to speak, but I wasn't sure if it was something she was looking for. And she was really in a busy season, and I kept thinking, I'm not gonna bother her with this question, but I really wanted to ask it. And I felt like God just opened up the door. She reached out to me about a video I posted on Instagram and said she was really inspired by it, help her to kind of move past this fear, this question. And she was grateful for it. And I was like, oh, here's my opening, right? So I said, I'm so glad that the video I shared helped you. If there's any topic like that one or any other topic that I talk about, I mean, my page, she follows me, she loves my content. Let me know and I'd be happy to come up with something and share it at the Clarity Day for the women that are attending. And I just kind of held my breath. And 2 days later, she reached out and said, yes, can you share like a power talk in quotes? And I was like, okay, a power talk. I think that's kind of like a mini keynote, something inspirational, motivational. And so I reached out and she said, yeah, maybe like 5 minutes. It ended up being 10 minutes. She was cool with it. I had about 72 hours to prepare it. So I just went into some really deep work in regards to thinking and journaling and praying and just writing and trying to figure out what's the one message I would want to share with people in this particular time. And it all came together. And then I just worked really hard to memorize it. And I remembered a tip that Jody Mayberry shared, who's a mutual friend of ours. And he talked about when he goes up to speak, he puts like 3 words on a little piece of paper. And that's all he kind of uses to jog his memory. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this. This might help me to do this memorization and do a really good job because it wasn't a fancy event. There wasn't big screens. There wasn't a monitor that was going to be in front of me reminding me what to say. It was just me in front of these women. And so I did that. I cut a little piece of like a little index card, small enough to fit in my palm. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to use. So nobody could see that I have a little something in case I get stuck because that's my first time. And I worked on like the main words and I could not be as good as Jody. I couldn't do 3. I did like 7 or 8, but they were really on point to remind me where I was at in case I didn't, hit a mark. But it went really well. I talked about limiting beliefs. I talked about, being open-minded as opposed to being closed-minded, which I was very closed-minded at one point. I didn't even realize it. I had to work into the awareness that I was, and how do I become more open-minded and really have an open heart to things. I had to work through that. And so I gave the ladies a really good visual, which a lot of people said was really helpful. And then I just closed it up and really encouraged them that at any age they could start working on these things. I mean, I started working at almost 50 on these things. And 4 years later, I'm in a completely different place than I would have ever been had I not run across really amazing content that caught my attention. Of all things, on a Facebook ad, someone caught my attention. I got curious. I looked and what is that? Else is this guy doing? Before you know it, I was ordering a book and entering a membership and diving deep into this thing that got me so curious and gave me so much hope. And that's why I love personal growth, is because it can give you such a more beautiful and brighter future, if you just dive in. So that's what I do. I pretty much just pay forward the things I'm learning. That's how it all started with my writing and now my speaking.
So you mentioned a couple of C words. Let's start with courage. Where does courage come from?
So funny that you caught on to the C. For some odd reason, this letter has been a huge part of my journey in so many ways, and I see it continue to pop up. So where does the courage come from? Is that your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Where does courage come from? Yeah.
Right. So courage. So, you know, I would say that this is actually really funny because I always felt like I was a very, very courageous person to the best of my ability in the world that I knew, right? And the first time I jumped onto a group coaching call, which is where this world of personal development just really opened up for me. It was a free coaching call. I said yes to it. I was telling myself, like, I'm going to go on to this thing and I'm going to love it. I know I'm going to probably love it. And I'm not going to be able to afford whatever program they're going to be promoting, but it's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to go and give it my all. And so I went ahead and said yes and did this coaching call. And I walked away from that coaching call volunteering to be one of the people that she spoke to one-on-one for a few minutes with this big takeaway. I learned something really huge about myself that day, and it really shocked me, was that I wasn't as courageous as I thought I was. And I was like, what? Like, I thought I was so courageous, and all of a sudden I realized that I wasn't in a very specific area of my life, and it kind of rocked me. And it impacted me so much that I realized if I learned this much about myself, something this important in such a small amount of time, in a session that wasn't even just for me, how much more could I learn about myself and areas that I don't even know I should be growing in if I worked with a coach one-on-one? And so I figured out a way to do it, despite originally thinking like, I'm probably not going to be able to. And there's a funny story behind that as well. But yeah, I went ahead and did it because I realized I didn't have as much courage as I thought I did. And so for me, courage is something that you gain in really small steps. It's the tiniest little steps that help you build the courage. But if you're someone that wants confidence, which I was seeking out more confidence, even though I felt confident, I wanted more because I felt like there were things I wanted to do in the future that I was going to need this big level confidence for. And I just figured out through the learning that the way I was going to get that confidence was by taking the courageous steps. So I started challenging myself, like, what can I do today that is going to make me uncomfortable? I started seeking out the discomfort. And the first time my coach shared with me that when he felt uncomfortable and he felt this thing in his stomach, where there was a lot of discomfort, he's like, that's when I know that whatever the thing is, I have to go for it. I have to do it. And at that time, when he shared it with me, I was so new in my journey that I thought he was insane. I was like, what in the world? I would never choose to go after something that makes me that uncomfortable. But I trusted him and I kept learning and listening to him. And so I started to kind of like look for that little feeling, that hesitation. And just when I'd feel it, then I'd think about what he was trying to teach me. And I'd be like, you know what? This is probably an area where I need to grow. So what can I do? What's one small step? And I just started taking those small, courageous steps so that I could build the confidence because I really wanted that to do whatever I was meant to do. And so courage is just about being uncomfortable and saying yes to the discomfort and taking action. And if you could take bold action in those moments, what's waiting for you on the other side is so amazing. When you experience that, then you're going to want to go back and do it more often. You're going to be like, oh man, the last time I was courageous, this amazing thing happened, or this amazing feeling, or this growth inside, or this boost. I love that. I want more of that. you're going to seek it out. And the more you seek it out, the more you're going to grow in courage and the more you're going to grow in confidence. So it's a huge part of the journey.
What gets in the way of people? What gets in the way of people building this courage or building this confidence? Like what's the thing that gets in the way and prevents them from doing it?
It's easy to stay comfortable. I mean, that's the easy route, right? And so who doesn't want to be comfortable and not I mean, it's sad to say who doesn't want to be who doesn't want to be challenged, but a lot of people don't. They don't want that challenge. They just want to kind of sit in what they're comfortable. Even if they've grown and they're on a growth journey, they may feel like, I've done so much growing, like I'm good. I hear this from someone I love a lot, and I won't mention who it is, but when we have conversations about stuff like this, like kind of like improving and these things, areas you can grow in, like I hear a lot, like, I'm good. Like, thanks, but I'm good, and it's just like, my heart, you know what I mean? Like, if I could just get them to see how much more potential or how much more is waiting for them on the other side of letting go of that I'm good and choosing to be intentional about being aware as to where you can grow, that's going to make the difference. That's going to bring more joy. That's going to bring more fulfillment. That's going to bring more and more beautiful success. I would just be so happy if I could do that for people, especially people I love. And it's challenging sometimes with the people that are closest to you, right? But I think a lot of people don't do the hard work because they're just comfortable and they're okay with being comfortable. And I think sometimes they just need someone to show them something really awesome and inspire them in a way that's going to make them want to rise up. And I feel like my coach, in many ways, helped me to work through that and gave me a reason to want to work hard and feel challenged to make him proud because he was doing such a beautiful thing in my life that I wanted him to know that I was putting in the work. I wanted him to know that I was putting in the work, that I valued his time. And so I don't know where else to go from that, but that's what kind of came up for me is I think people just are comfortable and they're okay with it and they don't value the challenge of just growing and where it's going to lead them.
So let's go back 5 years ago before
Sure.
you started on this journey. Kind of where were you at that point in time?
Oh my goodness. Well, my kids were all grown up. My youngest had just gotten her driver's license. So all of a sudden, I was free to not be the mom taxi anymore, which I loved being. I loved it. Like my entire purpose was wrapped around being a hands-on mom. And I couldn't afford to just be a hands-on mom. And, I had to work. So I'd work evenings and weekends, but I'd still be able to be there for the field trips and all the fun mom stuff, right? I was at the point where I could finally leave that weekend and night job and jump into something more full time if I wanted to, or all day or Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, whatever. And at that point, my biggest goal was just to find a role that I would feel really fulfilled in, something that paid me what I felt like I was worth in a sense, and something that I would enjoy. And I didn't really have any goals of like creating a business or anything like that. But at the same time, I didn't really have clarity as to what I wanted to do because what I thought I wanted to do was wrapped up in my old company and my old profession in a sense. And I was in a different state where they weren't anymore. So it's kind of like a little lost. Like, I don't just want to work for a random company, but I kind of need to start somewhere. So I was kind of really lost and, in that. And I also was going through some health problems and I was also going through some marriage problems. And so my very joyful, optimistic, hopeful, demeanor was kind of diminished in a sense. And I was not in a great place. And yeah, so that's why when personal development ran across my path, I really believe God put it there. It was like this ray of light. And I felt so much hope in everything I was running into. And I just got really curious and started to like, what else can I learn? What else can I find that's going to help me have a different kind of thought? Because as we know, our thoughts lead to how we feel. And as women, we feel deeply, and we can get very caught up in our feelings. And so if we can learn how to change how we're thinking, even if it's not overnight, right? It's not like a light switch. But if we start becoming aware of how important our thoughts are because our feelings are leading us in a direction that isn't really helping us, then we can start making those little catches, right? We can catch a thought and shift it. And that one shift for that day will just make a difference. And it's just going to kind of be one thing on top of the other, on top of the other, that starts creating the transformation. So I was in a place where I really needed something and I found something and I hung on to it with both hands so tightly. And then from like day one, practically, I just wanted everyone else to know about it because I didn't know about this and I had never run across it. How many people out there may have never had the opportunity to know that personal development exists, that these concepts exist, that if you apply them, they're going to change your life in the best way. And so, because I was changing careers and I decided to go with copywriting, I created an Instagram account, which I didn't have before. And I started writing on Instagram to practice my writing in general, practice things that are important in copywriting, like how to engage people, practice, giving a good message in a shorter amount of words, like being very clear and concise. I started practicing that on Instagram, but with my passion, with my love for personal development. So I started to pay forward these concepts by creating content on Instagram. And that just brought me so much joy and fulfillment. Just that step, just being able to serve other people with something that I was just barely learning, but I was having massive breakthroughs by learning these small things at the beginning, right? And so that's where I kind of was at 4.5 years ago. That's how it all started, was with working with an amazing coach, making a decision about something I loved, which was typing. And I love to type. And I thought, why not go into this copywriting thing? I don't know what it is, but I'm going to learn it. I'm a good learner. I can learn anything I put my mind to. I just dove in. And then I started practicing it in an area that I was passionate about. And yeah, that's how it all started. So that's where I was at.
Where or what did you search for to find this, or what, or where or what found you? Like, was it you
Hmm.
going out and searching? Was it something just dropped kind of you? Like, what happened? What, again, going back 4.5 years ago,
Yeah,
what happened?
I was looking for what I was going to do next, right? Into
Okay.
my retirement. What am I going to do
Yeah.
now that my kids are grown up? And I ran across a Facebook ad of all things. It was Dean Graziosi. He was talking about something real estate related. And I listened to the whole presentation. I wasn't sure if it wasn't for me, but I really, really liked him. And so I thought, well, what else does he have out there? Maybe he has something else he's offering that feels more like something I would want to do. And so I Googled him and I found a site where he had a little membership thing. And I thought, you know what? This is a smaller investment, right? And I can find out what else there is. And so I took a step. I invested in myself in a small way. And I started to kind of just learn. And from there, I just started getting the emails and I got curious about, well, what else? Well, he's got a book. Let me order the book. And Mike, I ordered this book that was like, I don't know, I want to say it was called like a Millionaire Secrets or something. And when I received this book, I was almost embarrassed by the title because I wasn't seeking to be a millionaire. It
Hmm.
felt a little weird. It felt a little like, not a little, it felt very big. But the reason I ordered it is because the way he talked about it was like these secrets that he was going to share in this book were like fundamental to anybody who wanted to do something big. And I wanted to do something big. I just didn't know what it was. So I went ahead and ordered it. I grabbed it. I kind of kept it like, I don't want anyone to see that I'm reading this book. It's kind of odd, right? But I started diving into it and it's just personal development, personal development, personal development, things that I had never seen before. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I got to stop and journal on this one thing he's talking about. And I wrote it on the side of the page, right? Journal on this. And so then I was like, you know what? I want to stop right here and get myself a new journal. And so taking those steps inspired me to the next steps. Like, go get a journal. I found one that really inspired me. It was big, it was black, it was bold, and it had all these little phrases and words written across it. I still have it. And they were things that I wasn't quite yet, but wanted to be. You know what I mean? And so I was like, oh, this journal is the perfect journal for what I'm experiencing right now. And so I bought the journal and I started journaling and reading through the book and highlighting like crazy and just starting to figure out what can I take a step, like what do I feel like I can take a step towards in this stuff. I wasn't ready for all of it. You know what I mean? It was definitely higher level than anything the level I was at, but that's okay because I was able to glean certain things from it that helped me at the place where I was at. And that's how it started, was crazy of all things, a Facebook ad that caught my attention because of the person, the personality. And then he had all this awesome content online that I could plug into, and it all caught my attention. And then from there, I just kept taking one step after the other. I ended up taking the email that he sent me for the free coaching, doing that step, deciding to work with a coach, and one step after the other, right? It keeps going. But that's where it was began, in a place where I wanted to make a shift. It was a big shift. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I needed a lot of clarity. And the word clarity wasn't even a part of my vocabulary. Like, I'm not kidding. I mean, I come from a blue collar family. My parents came from Cuba. I mean, we just focus on my parents working hard, loving each other, having amazing food, having amazing parties. I mean, loving and living life, but there wasn't a lot of focus on anything that could prepare me for eventually like having a great business or learning all these beautiful things or meeting these amazing people like yourself, learning the value of putting yourself in a room with people who are like way ahead of you and having the courage to stand in that room, and all of these things we get to learn on this journey of personal development. And it's just, I have such a passion for it.
Well, you highlighted some things that are really, really clear,
Mm-hmm.
like fun,
Mm-hmm.
family, interaction. So clarity existed, at least in one place.
Yeah.
What's clarity mean to you? Like, what's the word clarity mean to you?
You know what? Clarity is something that it's an ongoing process.
Okay.
So what I've learned is that, getting clear comes when we take action. Like, it's like you're on a path and the answers are ahead of you on the path, that you need to be clear and be more directional. But you will never find them if you don't have the guts to start before you're ready and take those steps. And so it takes courage to take those steps. So you're kind of like working on a bunch of stuff simultaneously on a growth journey. But finding clarity really matters, because when you have clarity, you can actually move at a faster pace, and you don't want to go fast. Like, you want to take your time, like especially if you have something you're working towards that you really have a heart for. It's your mission, right? It's your purpose. You don't want to speed through it and just blah, make it a mess, right? You want to take your time and do things right. But once you have clarity, you can move at a different pace and make that impact a little sooner, right? But seeking clarity for me is a lot of inner work. It's a lot of knowing how important awareness is, and working on finding those places where you need more awareness, just being really intentional about that. It's slowing down so you can speed up. And I hear people say this, and it doesn't make sense when you hear it. But when you start living it out, it makes a lot of sense. When you slow down, when you take that time. I spent a whole year with my year of the word being stillness a few years ago. And that was one of the most impactful years of my life, because I focused on being still. I focused on slowing down. And for me, a big part of that was spiritual. I wanted to be able to be still before God and learn how to hear his voice better. And so, but in that stillness, there was also the parts where I was also just learning to hear myself and trust myself and build that belief in my own thoughts and my own voice, and the things I wanted to share. So slowing down is really important. And you do find a lot of clarity when you find those moments to just be still and you unplug, Yeah. And so there's a lot of ways to find clarity, but it's really key to for all of our lives to have that clarity.
What are some of the questions you ask yourself or think about in order to create clarity?
Like, what matters to me the most? What am I what am I really excited and passionate about putting out into the world? How do I want to do that? Who do I want to do that for? You know, what is that going to look like? I do a lot of like, I don't know, like practicing to hear myself or see myself so that I can do better. Like, I do a lot of deep work to be able to hopefully make the impact I'm wanting to do. And I ask myself questions while I'm doing that, like how do you feel about that? How can you improve that? And so I ask myself a lot of questions. I think there's such a beautiful art. There's an art to asking yourself powerful questions. Gosh, you kind of put me on the spot because I have so many great questions I ask myself. But I do this thing in the mirror. I have an accountability buddy, and it's just this high five habit.
Well,
And so, and of all things, it's funny because you know who he is. It's Alvaro. And he and I also connected in this community. And this is why online communities are so powerful, because we need people to grow with. We're not meant to do this alone. So he's in Uruguay. Navy or Air Force pilot who retired, right? This completely different guy from me, mom, focused on the mom world, the wife world, wanting to jump into entrepreneurship with no clarity and trying to figure so much out. We meet in this community, we connect, we support one another. I run across this concept, I share it with him, and we've been doing this for over a year together, accountability wise. And it's a
Cool.
high five habit. So basically, you're high fiving yourself in the mirror every morning, or if you forget later in the day, and you're telling yourself something for that day. So it's almost like you're building yourself up, or you're maybe reminding yourself of something you didn't do so great that you want to do better at, in the upcoming season, right? And so, I talk to myself during those times as well, like, how do you want to show up today? That's a really big one, showing up for yourself. How do you want to show up today? I even set myself a little calendar reminder when I was still working a regular job that would pop up before my shift and just give me this one question to ponder before I walked in the door and had to deal with all the negativity because people are so negative at work a lot of the time. How do you want to show up today? And then I would answer that. Like, I want to be light in the darkness. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
want to shift the conversation. I don't want to get caught up in the negativity or the gossip or the complaining. Like, I want to shift that. And if I can't, then I'm going to walk away. And yeah, so stuff like that. But whenever I find a powerful question, like, how do, like creating a life you love, what does that look like? I'll put it in my cell phone. It pops up as a reminder once a day or once a week to remind me I want to ask myself this question because I want to continue to think about what would that life look like if I was creating a life I would love. Not that I don't love my life right now. I love my life. But that future life that I'm going to love even more, what does that look like? And I'll close my eyes and just give myself 60 seconds to think about that life. And sometimes the craziest stuff pops up, but that's how we start figuring out what am I really shooting for? What am I aiming for? What's my target? Because if not, then we're just kind of shooting arrows and they're just kind of going everywhere, right? But if we have a target and we know what that is, and that's why clarity is so important, we're super clear on what that is, then the steps that we're taking, they're never wasted steps. I don't want to say they're wasted, but the steps we're taking can be more directional. They can take us in a straighter path to find more of those answers that we need right along the way. So I hope that answered your question.
Would you high five yourself on today?
Oh my goodness, showing up for myself, getting up super early. I signed up for this 5-day intensive with a really incredible person in the space of teaching people like me that want to make an impact and have this beautiful movement towards something helping people, teaching them how to do that better online. And I signed up for it. It's 5 days this week, and it starts at 6 a.m. my time. So in order to be there at 6 a.m. my time and do my hair and makeup, which you already know, Mike, I like to do my hair and makeup. I had to wake up at at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I think I was a little anxious or excited or maybe worried about making it on time for that, being prepared for this. And I was up at like 3 something and I just could not go back to sleep. But I tried to rest so that I could be prepared for, especially today, because this podcast matters to me so much. I just tried to rest for a while, but then I got up and did my hair and makeup. And so my high five was just like, good job showing up for yourself, getting up, not canceling out on the Zoom earlier for that thing and saying, I'll watch the recording later. I showed up live for it at 6 a.m. I was fully present for over 90 minutes because they went over their time and then had about 10 minutes to prepare for this. But I high five myself for just being fully present and showing up and not canceling out on anything. I mean, I kind of thought, maybe I should send Mike a message. Oh, can we kind of shift the time of the podcast? And I was like, no, you're not doing that. You're going to show up ready, prepared, excited, and you're going to do this podcast and it's going to be awesome. And so it's not just about showing up. It's about showing up in the right energy, to use a word that a lot of people like, the right spirit, the right energy, the right excitement, and the right focus to really do what you're wanting to do for the day. So that's what I high five myself on today.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for showing up. How do you, when you say
Of
energy, what's that
course.
mean to you?
I think it's just what people feel from you. I think how they say like people may not remember your name, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. I think that's important. Like, how are you making people feel when you walk into a room, when you have a conversation, when you jump onto a Zoom with people? Like, I think that's what energy is. I have a group I'm a part of, for example, that it's a small community group. And I pop in there and like, like everyone's super present in the Zoom. There's one person who kind of jumps on, but you can tell they're doing something else on their computer while they're kind of listening into. And this one person always kind of distracts me, and I've chosen to not let him distract me anymore. I'm just like, I'm not even going to look at his Zoom box because to me, he's not fully present and he's not fully there. So why be there? Or turn off your camera and don't let us see that you're not fully present because it annoys me. It's like we're all there to learn and grow and share with one another, the ups and downs. And this is a beautiful part of the growth journey being in these online communities. And he's just kind of there, but not really there. And that type of energy just kind of says, like, I don't care enough. I'm a little too busy to just be here. And so that busyness sometimes, you don't want that. You don't want people to ever see that. And if it is part of your life, then it's okay to opt out of something until you can be fully present. Like, come on the day when you can come and just be with us. Just be with us. Just be where you are. Do it in a very authentic way. No fakeness. Just be who you are. Love who you are and show up for people and just be there to serve. And it's also beautiful to receive, be there open to receive as well. So,
What is something that you've learned in the last 4.5 years that surprised you, that you wish you would have been ready to learn earlier?
I think one of the biggest surprises for me in the learning, because there was so much learning and I love it. I love it. But there's so much it can be overwhelming. One of the biggest things I learned was that unlearning was a massive part of the process of growing, and I had no clue for the longest time. I was just like learning, 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 growing, growing, growing. And then I ran across something, and this is why it's important to consume really good content. Be intentional about it. Like scroll with a purpose. Don't just scroll to watch the puppy videos. I do that too. I love it. But take the time to scroll with a purpose. Look for accounts that are really going to lift you up. They're going to help you on your journey. And I ran across this whole concept of unlearning, and it just stopped me in my tracks because I had never seen it before. And I was like, unlearning, like what exactly should I be unlearning? Like, gosh, there's so much to learn. Now I got to figure out how to unlearn. Oh my goodness, I'm a little more overwhelmed. But I got curious about it. And that's how you truly grow. Like, get curious, invest the time and figure out what things mean that kind of catch your attention because they're meant for you. And in that moment, that was so meant for me because I had a lot that I needed to unlearn that I had no idea I needed to unlearn. So then that journey began. What do I need to unlearn? Well, how do I do that? And you do that, sometimes you're working with an amazing coach that can help you do that. Sometimes you're not working with a coach and you just have people that you've connected with that are on a journey and you can have these amazing conversations. Maybe you get an accountability buddy and you both work on these things together. Like however you choose to do it, just do it. Don't ignore things that pop up that resonate with you and you realize, man, I got to do some work in this area. Don't just, take those step backs into your comfort zone because it's a little scary to confront the things that you might have to unlearn. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. It's an added thing I have to do. Don't back down from that. Like that is where the real growth happens when you take on these challenges, right? And so that was a big part that surprised me and has been an added layer to my growth journey and something that I probably need to talk about a little bit more in my content. I don't talk a lot about it, but I think it's really important.
This piece will come out. We're getting close to the top of the hour. So I wanted to just kind of pause and just say, what do you think? How has the conversation been so far?
I've been enjoying it, Mike. I think that having these conversations it's all learning. Even having this conversation and trying to share something that will hopefully touch someone's life, you're learning as you speak things out. You're learning as you share. It's the way you have that deeper learning. So I'm learning and just having this conversation with you, which is fun. But I did have that one question I wanted to ask you because you asked me about getting to speak for the first time in front of people and not just online and on Clubhouse or in a Zoom, actually leading a conversation, how huge that was for me. It's changed a lot. And I won't go into any of that, but because it's changed so much for me, I had this question for you. So, Mike, when was the last time you did something where you were able to then say to yourself, like, if I could do that, I can do anything? Like, you did something so huge. You took this leap, you did this bold thing. You didn't even know if you could do well. You did it. Hopefully, you knocked it out of the park. Maybe you didn't, but that's okay. But you did it. And you walked away with so much more confidence, feeling like, if I could do that, I could do anything. Have you had anything like that recently or in the past? I'm just curious.
All the time. And the reason
Okay.
why I say all the time is because I have adopted a continuous learning, beginner's mind approach to the way
Mm,
that I go about doing things. So I'm extremely comfortable with constantly testing different stuff. My biggest challenge is I'm also very self-critical. And
mm,
I want, and part of that being self-critical is this constant drive of learning. So yeah, as far as the, hey, I can do anything, I have a high level of confidence around my
good.
ability to go out and do anything. The bigger challenge is more on choosing what things to do in what
Mm,
order so that I make sure that those things get done and I don't get myself into the trap of trying to do too much. I sure with folks on an earlier episode about my journey into speaking and participating in the National Speakers Association conference. And I've spoken for a number of years now. I've had opportunities to get in front of groups, and I went from being extremely uncomfortable in front of groups, high nerves off the chart, to a bit more comfortable, but still extremely nervous when things start. Like there's a like even in this thing that I spoke at in Chicago a week ago, it was somebody was in the room and they had highlighted how nervous I sounded, and
mm,
that's someone who knows me, so their ability to see that was different than other people in the room who provided different feedback. So nerves will still get me, and part of it is because I have so much information that I want to share, that I want to convey, that I want to help people with, that I get worried about, am I going to be able to deliver all of it? So there's this
mm,
interesting balance relative to confidence in ability to test things, because I know that if you don't go out there and test something, you don't know whether or not it's going to work. I can't read about things and make an inference or judgment on whether or not something's going to work. I actually have to go and do the work, because that's where the the feedback can really happen. Real
mm,
feedback can happen. So to get back into your specific question about areas where I've challenged myself, challenging myself to launch the business with a co-partner back 7.5 years ago was a big challenge. Continuing to keep it going along is a big challenge. Shifting the name of the business from Catalyst Sale to Catalyst Acts was a big shift. And there are a lot of people who kind of wonder, why did you do it? Why go through that? And the primary reason is because of is impact and clarity. So being able to broaden the impact to go beyond people who have preconceived notions around what sales is and why they shouldn't really care about or don't need to learn about sales processes. Getting past that by changing the name of the company from Catalyst Sale to Catalyst Acts was an important thing, because it starts to open
mm,
up the
yes.
accessibility of the content to other people. Like when we
Mm,
were on Clubhouse discussions together, I would talk about problem solving. And ultimately, what we were using was an account planning framework. But I couldn't call it an account planning framework in front of that group, because they would get lost in, well, why am I worrying about accounts? I don't have accounts that work on. But you do, you solve problems, and the same framework applies. Or effective meetings, that's a call plan. These tools apply. The challenge is when we have this bias around a name or a label that we put around it and say, well, I don't want to be salesy, so it doesn't really apply here. So that has been a very important and stressful shift that's happening relative to the business. I still think it's the right thing to do. It's not
mhm,
where we make money today. The majority of the
mm,
money that we make, or customers that I work with, are more on the leadership, fractional leadership side of things, doing a lot of the sales and revenue specific pieces. But making that change has been a big shift, and it's also come with highlighting a specific aspect of the business that, although I can see directly how the dots connect between being successful in revenue producing roles and being successful in life apply, it still is a it's still a struggle. So having the confidence to be able to make that shift, and also being comfortable with the view of, hey, you know what, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back. Like, and I can always go back and do this other thing. But all indicators are that we're moving in the right direction. And then when I get feedback from people around things like shift in mindset, shift in perspective, simplifying things, you start to get that feedback from people and you realize, wow, this is really resonating, and it's starting to make this open to more people who might have typically not gotten the message because they associated me as some sales guy who, was going to talk about how to help people sell better, which I do. That stuff exists out there, but it's already been recorded on. Now the shift is more into, how do we perform better? How do we find more meaning? How do we gain that focus through clarity? So that's been a pretty big shift, and my confidence continues to increase that it's the right thing, but I don't know, and I'm confident enough that we'll figure it out here pretty soon. I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Wow.
that's the response it inspired. So thank you.
I love hearing that because there's discomfort in a sense. Like there could be, you could overthink it and be like, what, all these questions that are come. Why are you changing the name? How am I going to really explain it? It barely makes sense to me. I'm figuring all this out. How am I going to explain it in a way that's going to make sense to other people? Like you're having to grow through that. You're not just going through it, you're growing through it.
Right.
And if it resonates deeply with you and it feels like the right direction, you're doing it. You're getting past the discomfort and you're facing the fear that may be there and may not be there. And you're building even more confidence. Even though you're confident, Mike, there is level upon level upon level of confidence that is meant for you. And you're going in that direction, which is awesome. And if people are resonating with it, like how fun is that? You're just getting back that positivity that, oh, that little thing inside of me, yeah, that was the right direction. It's gonna just get better and better. So I'm excited for you.
So on the other side, an area where I don't feel confident is when I've got a 145-yard shot to the middle of the green, island green, surrounded by water, and I've got this tendency to pull all of my shots to the left right now. So
Oh,
there's this balance of confidence. Like there's
oh my
confidence
goodness.
in the stuff that we're doing from a business perspective, and then there's this complete lack of confidence and lack of trust associated with my golf swing right now.
Man, well, one last question. How are you going to fix that in the personal part of the golfing? Like, what's one step that's
Yeah.
going to get you that confidence you need?
Yeah, so I laid this out. This episode is going to go live. I'm not sure when, but there was a post on Sundays. I'm now starting a new series around connecting the dots between strategy and tactics as it relates to achieving your goal. So you have a
Mhm.
goal, then what the goal is, you have the how, the strategy, and then you have the tactics, the what, the behaviors that you're working through and doing it. So the specific instance that I shared was around getting to a single digit handicap in my golf game, which is a pretty big deal for people who play golf. So the tactics, or excuse me, the strategy falls into three areas. It's working on the mental aspect of my game, which is decision making. When I'm in a bad situation, not turning one bad shot into two bad shots.
Mhm.
It's working on the short game. So what am I doing with wedges when I'm in and around the green? And then the third one is getting off the tee. And getting off the tee would impact this one around hitting onto the island green.
Mhm.
So from a strategy perspective, I organize around three different areas. So three general actions: the mental side, the short game side, and then the off the tee. From a tactical perspective, it's about building confidence through repetition and training and practice. So it's going in and putting myself in situations where I get to take those shots at a practice facility and kind of work through the same kind of motion. So I have an objective where on a weekly basis, I want to take 30 low approach shots with a wedge. I want to take 30 high approach shots with that same wedge. So same club, having different ball flight. And I want to, I forget if it was 30 or 50 shots off the tee to specific targets that are similar. I don't have water in the target area, but are similar to that same target that I'm looking at on the 17th hole on our course. So there's some specific work that needs to be done relative to going and putting that work into practice. And then metrics that I hold myself accountable toward as far as hitting, like how many of those shots did I take? That's not outcome driven, it's activity driven in that instance, because if I'm doing the activity that aligns with the strategy, ultimately I should get closer to my goal. Now, if I'm doing the activity that aligns with the strategy and I'm not getting closer to my goal, then I have to either revisit the strategy or revisit the tactics. And I won't know until I actually do that work. So that is the specific work that I'm doing around that challenge as it relates to the golf course. I'm going out there and getting the reps in and doing the practice.
Awesome. Well, they say practice makes perfect, but I've heard recently that practice creates progress. And I like that because you're going to keep having that progress. It's going to be awesome and great. And I wish I knew more about golf to understand everything you said, but that's okay because I got the gist of it. And I like that mindset was a part of it. Mindset is so key. So I love that it was one of your steps.
So, Letty, where can people find out more about what you're working on? Where would you like people to connect with you?
Awesome. The best place, honestly, is Instagram. I'm on Threads now as well, which has been fun and different. Letty.joy, Letty.joy. And then LinkedIn, it's more like my full name, Leticia Benavides, because it's got to be Hispanic because I'm Cuban. So I'm not doing as much on LinkedIn yet, but I plan on doing more on LinkedIn. My about section kind of says under construction, and it just has like one testimonial with some pictures. You can see because I'm shifting into focusing more on the speaking and not just the writing. And then, of course, the coaching aspect as well. And then the main thing right now I'm working on, aside from that, is continuing to build community for people that want to grow alongside others. And so I'm the founder of Nurture Your Growth online community. And so if anybody wants information on that, they can send me a DM on Instagram and we can have a good chat.
Perfect. We'll include links in the show notes. If you know
Yeah.
somebody who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them and let Letty and I both know via Instagram or LinkedIn. Both places will pay attention to those shares. It helps others find content and not go through a 40 some odd year long journey before realizing that there's this thing out there called personal development that will help inspire
Exactly.
and drive personal growth. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about yours?